podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Tennis Unfiltered, a Snap podcast. George and I are going to react, I was going to say live to the draw, but that is so untrue in so many senses, I'm not sure I can even bastardise the word. I've nipped off site at Wimbledon, so I'm just outside the grounds recording this to react to the draw, which took place just an hour ago. In which many of you will have watched, in fact, for the first time in Wimbledon history. They used to put it on the radio, which I always thought was pretty quaint, but dragging themselves, well, I was going to say 21st century, but into the 20th century, 21st maybe a little bit high and mighty for Wimbledon. The top lines, of course, you already have heard. Andy Murray drawing fellow Brit Ryan Peniston in the first round. Venus Williams against Alina Svitolina. They are, of course, the biggest news, but we'll take you through line by line. We'll talk about maybe who we're going to pick in our fantasy teams, and me and George will try not to embarrass ourselves too much. We will start with the women's singles and the top section, headed, of course, by number one seed Iga Swiatek. A little bit of news breaking this morning, by the way, is that Iga Swiatek just pulled out of a match in Bad Homburg. I'm told she had a bad hamburger. Bad hamburger. No, I mean, I must thank Eleanor Crooks for that gag. But it's not great news because she does have food poisoning. She says she didn't really sleep last night. And because of the way the draw is, Novak Djokovic will open centre court on Monday, and the top half of the women's draw, therefore, will dovetail with it, which means Iga Swiatek will have to play on Monday. So she has just 3 days to recover from food poisoning, George. I think probably that won't... I mean, obviously it's not great from a physical standpoint, but there's nothing in her first couple of days that should worry her, right? Zhu Lin in the first round, and then either Trevisan or Sarah Sorribes Tormo in the second round.
Yeah, I think she should be feeling pretty good about it. Just a point of clarification. Am I right in thinking that the reason her draw has to go with Novak's is because they open it with the men's singles champion on Monday and they open it with the women's singles champion on Tuesday? So it's actually that Rybakina's in the other half of the draw means that...
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the Rybakina going into the bottom of the women's draw that really pushes Iga onto Monday.
Yeah, which is, a shame for her. But, I mean, look, it's a bit of a dream draw, isn't it, this? I can't really see any obstacles in that run to the quarterfinals. And, even at the quarterfinal stage, the player you're looking at who's shown some good form on grass in the past is Goff, I guess. And
well, we all know how that head-to-head goes. Yeah.
In that,
is it 6-0?
really
it's 6-0 now, right? 12 sets, or is it 7-0? I can't quite remember. And all
it's hard to
say
anything but semi-finals for Swiatek. I mean, that said, this hasn't been her best slam. So, who would have had her going out to Elise Cornet last year? Probably not many people. But that's more of a tricky draw than anything I can see in this one.
I think probably if there is a danger, it's the fourth round. Like, her third round slated opponent is Petra Martic. I don't think that is really much to worry about. In the fourth round, if someone like Magdalenetti gets going and gets it, or Belinda Bencic hasn't been super fit, so we don't really know. Yeah. She's got Katie Swan, a British wildcard in the first round. Should be noted, Harriet Dart is in this section as well against Diane Parry in the first round. I'm sort of clutching at straws to try and find some intrigue in Iga Swiatek's first week, but can't see a lot really. It's hard to see her not making the semis at least. If we drop into section 2, which, as you say, George, contains Coco Gauff, that is where Iga Swiatek's potential quarter-final opponent will come from. Gauff's got Kenin in the first round, who came through qualifying, which is quite funny, but it's not the draw of this section. Venus Williams, Alina Svitolina, audible gasps in the press room, George.
Yeah, it's a great first round tie. I mean, I think Svitolina wins quite comfortably for me. Yeah. I mean, Venus, she played a decent match the other week against Georgi, but I don't know, she's 43 and has played like a couple of matches this whole year. I kind of fancy Svitolina in this whole section.
That's interesting.
That's my rogue tip. Wildcards count as qualifiers now, don't they, in fantasy? Is that right?
They do, yes, indeed.
So I think she's who I will pick. I'm sure people will go for Venus, and they may well be right that Venus just serves her off the court. But I think Svitolina's got a chance to at least make third round, possibly. And if you get past the third, you can reach the quarter.
I think fitness is the problem for Venus, really. She didn't look super fit when she lost to Ostapenko in Birmingham. And obviously she had a bit of time to turn that around, but I think that would be the concern in that. What is definitely the sort of blockbuster on Monday, you would expect that'll be on centre probably just straight after Novak Djokovic, you would think. We'll know the schedule probably by Saturday.
Would it be the first time two wildcards have been on centre facing each other on day one? I mean, I can't imagine that's happened many times.
Surely a British wildcard against another high-profile wildcard. I don't know. I will ask George. That's a really hard stat to track down because, as you know, the ITF, whenever you go and ask the ITF a question like that, they say, we don't have access to orders of play. So you then have to go to the All England Club and they're like, this is the busiest week of our year. Can you not ask us these really esoteric stats questions? So, yeah, the other seeds in that section, Daria Kasatkina, Victoria Azarenka and Elise Mertens, I don't think we're necessarily... I mean, Kasatkina, I always think that she's someone who should play quite well on grass. Like, that kind of junky, low-spin style, I think, could be quite tricky. And she beat Pliskova at Eastbourne, which I think is not a bad scalp to pick up either. So,
yeah,
maybe she's the one.
It's a relatively... I mean, I've said I think Svitolina could do it, but, Goff should be looking at that section if she was in form and thinking, I'm going to come through that. But there are players in there that, as you mentioned, Kasatkina, seen her play well on the grass before. Azarenka, has experience, can go deep in slams. I'd be stunned if Venus went far from a fitness perspective. She might potentially win that first match, but I still think Svitolina should win. And yeah.
Into section 3, headed by, Jessica Pegula is her name. In the draw, she was called Julia Pegula. Which is a rather unfortunate misstep of which...
Is that a better name? I think that is a better name.
Well, it's sort of got a bit of internal
Julia
rhyme.
Pegula.
Yeah. There are some elements to which that is marginally better. I would say the other seeds in this section, Maya Sharif, Cheng Xinwen and Ludmila Samsonova. I mean... I think this is the most open section of the draw, George. I think you could pick any one of these names. Alicia Parks, Camelia Osorio, Kamia Rakimova, and I think you can make a case for almost any of them.
Yeah, I'm looking at this like I have no idea who's going to win this section. Samsonova, maybe.
Well, she has had good results on grass. She is actually, as we speak, she's still playing in Bad Homburg. She beat Noskova and Tomova in the early rounds. And she did lose first round in Berlin, but to Alexandrova, who's been an absolute beast on grass this year. So I think she's got a chance. She's obviously someone who has had results on the surface. But it's Pegula. You could say it's Pegula's to lose. She's world number 4. If she really wants to own that position, then she needs to come through sections like that and make the quarters in straight sets.
Yeah, but she probably won't.
But indeed, I look forward to writing a preview on, Claire Liu when she gets into the quarterfinals to play, who we expect. And again, section 4, which is the bottom of the top. I mean, I have no idea who's coming out of this in the same way. The seeds are Kudermetova, Donovekic, Marie Buzkova and Caroline Garcia. I look at it and think that Buzkova should probably quite fancy her chances there.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is a draw. I'm just looking at oh my word. I'm thinking purely from fantasy perspective. These are the sort of sections you really want to pick in because it's so winnable.
But there isn't an obvious name.
Garcia, when she was in form at the start of the year, you'd be thinking, yeah, gosh, she's going to fly through this. And then, she's had just a shocker in the last few months and spoken about kind of loss of confidence.
Yeah. I spoke to Caroline Garcia in Eastbourne and I sort of said, you're sticking with this hyper-aggressive. She's like, well, I sort of have to, but it hasn't really been working. That is a problem. And I was like, have you ever considered not? And she's like, no, well, I've considered it, but everyone seems to think it's okay. So, yeah, she is someone I think if she wins 2 matches and she's got Katie Volinets and then either Bindel or Fernandez, and I don't think Fernandez has got a huge amount to say about grass court tennis. I think if she kind of gets into her stride, then you might see something. But I watched Buzkova against Haddad Maia the other week, and she's a canny player, Buzkova, and I think she's got the right tools to be handy on grass. And I think probably is the kind of player who could just she made the quarterfinals here last year. She knows what she's doing. And I think probably has a half a chance of doing something pretty similar before. So she's the number 32 seed, which puts her in the possible bracket for fantasy tennis, where you have to pick either 17 through 32 seed, one from that bracket. I think she might, and I don't know if I've ever picked the number 32 seed, George. She might attract my attention in fantasy tennis, I would suggest.
Yeah, I think the other one I'm kind of erring towards as a potential pick, mainly because of the section, is Vekic, who of course reached the final in Berlin not long ago, losing to Kvitova.
I don't know how fit. I mean, she pulled out of Bad Homburg, but I'm guessing that was because she made the final in Berlin. Yeah.
But she beat, if you look at that run there, Rybakina, Butsakari, decent wins.
Just a really tough first round against Zhang Shui, really experienced player, quite tricky player. I just think that might be the, if she comes in a little bit cold and a little bit nervy. She's also got Pam Shriver, I believe, working with her as a sort of, I hesitate to say coach. I think she said she was helping her when I spoke to her about it. But, that seems like the most accurate. Right, into the bottom half. The first section has Ons Jabeur, Angelina Kalinina, who I hope everyone read my interview with her from a couple of weeks ago. It's, I have to say, quite good. And I just mean she's a very good talker, and it's a very compelling story. Karolina Pliskova and Petra Kvitova. I mean, that could be a hell of a third-round clash between two Czech players with grass court credentials, George. Pliskova and Kvitova.
Yeah, this is a tougher section to call for different reasons. In the sense, there are players who feel either in good form or have real pedigree.
Yeah.
I do kind of fancy Ons Jabeur still. I think, I always say I don't think she'll win a slam, but I do think she's a very, very handy grass court player and could easily go deep here. But there's banana skins, isn't there? I mean, Andreescu potentially third round. You never know which Andreescu's going to turn up, but that's not a player you want to be mucking around with. Kvitova's obviously arrived, having just won a big title. I've said it last week, though. It's very Kvitova to win a title and then it all go completely wrong when it happens at the slam. But she's obviously won here before. I don't really fancy Pliskova, if I'm being honest. I'd probably say Ons Jabeur here, which is a very boring pick, but feels the right one to me.
Yeah, I would probably agree with you. I mean, she's got Magdalena Fresh in the first round, who's got a bit of a habit of, she's the new Kaya Kanepi, George. I think she's the ultimate awkward first round. Now, because Magdalenetti is now seeded, so you can't call her the Kaya Kanepi. And of course, briefly, Kanepi was seeded. Right, let's move down. Keep tripping through here. Section 6, Beatrice Haddad-Maia, Yelena Ostapenko, Bernarda Pera, and Elena Rybakina. I think this is pretty stacked, this little bit.
Yeah, Cornet in there as well.
Yeah, Tatiana Maria, who obviously went deep last year. Also our own Katie Bolter, she's got Darius Saville in the first round, and then either Pera or Tomova. I think she has landed in a very tough section, but a sort of nice little sort of seam in it. Yeah, she could reach third round, I think, quite easily, and then play Elena Rybakina and probably get blown off the court.
Yeah.
I mean, Ostapenko Haddad-Maia is the slated third round here. Who do you pick if they get each other?
I think I pick Ostapenko. Just.
It's close, isn't it? I think probably it comes down to fitness. Ostapenko retired against Gorgi the other day, and claiming dizziness. Now, I don't know whether she was just like, Wimbledon's coming up and this is turning into a bit of a schlep. But, whereas Haddad-Maia, well, she is managing a knee injury. I know that. I think it's knee. But I just wonder whether, Haddad-Maia has played basically all of the longest matches on tour this year and is super fit. Yeah. I think that's going to create an issue.
But Rybakina to win the section, we think.
Yeah, I think so. Like, she's not been very well. She's obviously still struggling with this virus she had in Paris. But when I happened to bump into her just before she pulled out. It's the first time, George, where a player has broken the news to me that they are pulling out in person. Like, I was like, "Oh, are you playing today or tomorrow?" And she said, "Oh, I'm pulling out of Eastbourne, actually." So I was like, "Oh, okay, well, that's news." And I said, "Oh, you'll be all right for Wimbledon." And she said, "Yeah, I just need a little bit more time." So hopefully she'll be fine. Right, into the bottom two eighths. Maria Sakkari, Madison Keys, Anastasia Potapova, Barbora Krejcikova, the last of whom plays Heather Watson in the first round. Madison Keys has got Sonny Kartal. Not sure we're very optimistic about the Brits in those two matches. To be, with the greatest of respect to both, Krejcikova's, I think, already won a title on grass this year, hasn't she?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to make a compelling case for either winning that. Again, there's none of these sections that I'm like, oh, I'm super confident someone's going to win this. The only one is Swiatek's, really. So, I mean,
yeah.
Probably, I keep sort of semi-backing Krejcikova, and she's letting me down at the minute. So I'm kind of at that phase now where I want to move away from her. But it's a good section, isn't it, really? I mean, I would say.
Yeah, I would probably agree with you. I'm struggling to see any. Mira Andreeva is in there, the qualifier, and the young Russian who everyone's so excited about. But I think, first Wimbledon, I don't know if she's ever even really seen a grass court before. Obviously, she's come through qualifying, which is no mean feat, but I would suggest that maybe she's probably going to be finding that pretty tricky, Krejcikova, in the second round. Right, very finally, we will go to the bottom section, where, of course, Aryna Sabalenka is incumbent. Karolina Muchova, the French Open finalist, is in there too. Ekaterina Alexandrova, who's been playing very well on the grass, and Irina Camelia Begu. George, other names that popped out at me: Linda Noskova, very highly rated Czech young player. Kamia Gorgi as well, who knows what she's doing on grass. Do you see Sabalenka coming out of this with ease?
I see her getting to the fourth round with relative ease, I would say. I think there's a couple of potential bananas. I mean, Muchova played really well at the French, and she obviously beat her. And she's got a game that should be good at grass. Niemeyer's a decent player as well.
Yeah, hits it very hard.
Not an easy first round draw for Muchova. But yeah, you'd have to think Sabalenka would come through that. And really, I mean, looking at this in the round, you'd expect her and Rybakina to kind of meet. I mean, the main banana thing you'd maybe say is potentially on Jabeur on Rybakina's side, but I think Sabalenka's fallen in quite a nice spot to get herself to the semis, so I would say.
Well, I just think Alexandrova is going to be a tough one. I mean, you'd rather play her fourth round than third round because, in theory, Sabalenka should have eased herself into the tournament a bit more. But, she won the title was it Rosmalen she won? She beat, I'm trying to remember, she beat Kudermetova in the final in Rosmalen. So, I think she could be a bit of a threat. But, you'd expect Sabalenka to come through. Right, let's move on to the men's draw, shall we? As we try and rattle through things here. Carlos Alcaraz, number one seed, world number one, deposing Novak Djokovic by winning Queens. George, I would have said 2 weeks ago, oh gosh, that's a tricky draw for Carlos Alcaraz. And now he's won Queens, looks like he was born on a grass court already. And I'm just like, well, I'm struggling to see anyone stopping him other than Djokovic. Again?
Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously come to Novak's draw. Novak's draw is an absolute gift. I think I genuinely cannot see him dropping a set reaching the final, to be perfectly honest. I don't think he could have asked for a better draw. I think Alcaraz is, Rinderknech gave him a bit of a decent match in Queens last week. He wouldn't be that pleased to necessarily play him again. Calvin isn't such a fan of Nicholas Jarry, but he's in really good form and playing some good stuff. on both the clay and the grass. So I don't think that's an easy third round tie, even though, in reality, when you're going to face a seed in the third round, it's always going to be someone of that ilk, you'd have thought. De Minaur gave him an okay match, but you wouldn't really fancy him. Zverev feels like he should be okay on grass, but there's never quite.
It's just the movement, isn't it? Like, he's got the game for it, but I just think he's still not got the confidence in the movement, and that's going to hold him back, I think. Yeah.
So he should come through that Alcaraz, really.
Yeah, but I think he will probably come through. I think he might drop 2 sets en route, and I think we might go, Alcaraz is in the quarters and he's being tested. He's earned his place there, and I think that actually is the worst possible outcome for whoever plays him in the quarterfinals, which will be one of, from potentially Tiafoe, Dimitrov, Davidovich Fokina, Rune. Sorry, I've started saying it like Calvin says it. Rune. It's Rune. And who has George Lofhagen in the first round. We'll talk to Calvin over the weekend about George Lofhagen. He knows him very well. Francis Tiafoe? Tiafoe Rune is a great fourth round if we get it.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. And I hope we do it. Davidovich Fokina is a very random bloke, and he can definitely play on this.
I think, he's junior Wimbledon champion, I believe.
Yeah. There's players in there, again, I don't like the idea of, facing Popperin in round 2 at Wimbledon. That's not a nice draw on paper. Big server, can get up for kind of early slam matches, even if you're not expecting him to go far. But yeah, it'd be great. It'd be great for Tiafoe to have a bit of a run at Wimbledon and get his profile up here. And similarly for Rune.
I watched Tiafoe play Djokovic at Hurlingham on Thursday, and Djokovic looked like he'd spent 3 weeks preparing for it and was utterly at ease. And Tiafoe looked absolutely knackered, to be honest. So it didn't fill me with. But Tiafoe often looks knackered, and it can be a bit of a possum situation, I think. But I don't know. We'll see. I apologise for the wind, listeners. This is what you get with snap pods, unfortunately. Sometimes. Grigor Dimitrov in the third round could be quite tricky if he's playing well. He knows his way around a grass court, but other than that, I'm not. And as you say, I think if Tiafoe gets to the fourth round or even the quarters, then I think he will have earned his place there, a bit like Alcaraz. Just for listeners at home, I've got a lovely view of George now, which is sort of him flat on his back on his bed and staring down at him. This is the view his girlfriend gets, I believe. Right, into section 3. Daniil Medvedev, who's playing Brit Arthur Ferry, Talon Grexport, Francisco Cerundolo, and Tommy Paul. We've also got Milos Raonic in here, although I don't know how fit he is. Well, I know how fit he is, and he's not super fit. But George, I'm quite tempted to pick Tommy Paul here, albeit he is the number 16 seed, which puts him in the bottom of the probables bracket. But I think he has got a game for grass. He likes it. He likes coming forward. He likes volleying. He's played quite a lot on grass. He went and played Stuttgart. He played Queens. He's at Eastbourne this week. Am I trying to talk myself into a mistake?
Not necessarily a mistake. I think you're right. He's got some decent opponents here. Look, if this was 5 years ago and he was facing Raonic in round 2, you'd be like, absolutely no chance. But it's not. He's not.
Yeah.
I still think Medvedev should be doing well enough on grass to win this section. I think Medvedev, Tommy Paul would be a decent fourth round.
Yeah, I think we'd take that. Middle Sunday or something. This is the top half, so no, so it can't be middle Sunday, it would be middle Monday. But anyway. Into Cam Norrie's section, where there are 3 Brits. Cam Norrie, number 12 seed, takes on Thomas Mahatch. Fellow seeds Sebastian Korda, Ben Shelton, Stefan Tsitsipas, and Andy Murray faces Ryan Penniston in the first round, and then either Dominic Thiem or Stefanos Tsitsipas. George,
it's a great draw, isn't it?
They've put all the players we talk about in the same little corner of the draw.
I really like this part of the draw. It's probably my favourite bit. I mean, you have to think Murray's going to win that first match.
Yeah.
That would be a major surprise if he didn't. I think we're about to have this test of where Andy Murray is, really. Tsitsipas, second round of the Slam. I think he can win that. That even as the person who's been poo-pooing Andy Murray's chances at Wimbledon against top players, Tsitsipas is in no form on grass. He's really played quite poorly. I don't know. It feels winnable, which is crazy in some ways to say it, because it's still a kind of a top 5 seed at the Slam, and maybe Tsitsipas is just going to be too strong for him, and we'll really see what Murray's level is. But I think Murray will really fancy his chances of reaching the third round. And then,
Ben Shelton.
Someone maybe Maxime Cressy is another one that could be quite an interesting...
3 years ago, or not 3, but in his previous incarnation, Murray would eat up Maxime Cressy, but John Isner chopped him up quite recently here.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's a fascinating draw. Do you give Cam Norrie any chance against Sebastian Korda in the third round?
I mean, I think Korda's my pick for the whole section, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he's a brilliant, brilliant player. It's just always a question with him of, is he fit enough to go deep in the Slams? And Norrie definitely is. And that's where that battle really comes down to for me. Norrie did really well last year, but I think Korda's a step too far, probably.
For news of Sebastian Korda's physical transformation, keep your eyes on my Twitter feed and inews.co.uk and the iNewspaper, because I have interviewed Sebastian Korda and he's told me all about his work with Jez Green and Mark Bender, both of whom used to work with Andy Murray, actually. So you can read a bit more about that. Into the bottom half, Yannick Sinner, Dan Evans, Yoshihito Nishioka and Taylor Fritz. This is a tricky one, George. I mean, maybe just because I've interviewed him recently and I really like him, and Taylor Fritz.
Yeah.
Good, excellent. Yeah. Moving on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's him or Sinner, isn't it, really, I think? Yeah. Sinner did pretty well last year.
I mean, I'd love Evo to have a run, but, I mean, he's just playing so badly at the moment, and he would agree with that.
He's got a draw to get to the third round even so, though, doesn't he? I mean, there's very willable matches.
Quintin Alice and then either Vukic or Altmaier. I mean, I think he would win both of those, 1 in 4, 1 in 5. That feels like the kind of way that might go, and then sort of bow out to Sinner, unfortunately. But we'll see exactly how that pans out. But yeah, Taylor Fritz or Yannick Sinner, that'll be the fourth round clash, hopefully, and quite a popular one, I would suggest. Section 6, we've got Borna Coric, Roberto Bautista Agut, Denis Shapovalov, Casper Ruud. So what we've got here, George, is 4 players who we think all of them have their own merits, and none of them we think play well on grass. So Liam Brody, here he comes.
I think Shapovalov does play well on grass. He's just not playing well, full stop.
Yeah, that's true enough. Yeah, and
but
it's a massive.
If there is a Slam, he's going to turn it around. This is a good chance, really.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I think he will, but he's got to be looking at this draw and thinking, I can win this section.
Yeah.
Whether he does is another question. It'll probably end up being Bautista Agut or something, just, who's consistent enough to come through it. But
anyone tempted by Borna Coric, I would I mean, I think Borna Coric would struggle to be tempted by Borna Coric. I spoke to him the other day, and he basically just expressed his disdain for all things green and grassy. He was just like, "Yeah, I'm here, aren't I?" So yeah, moving on. So sorry, who are you picking to win that section? Shapovalov. Oh, okay. We're on the fence.
Tentatively, maybe.
I think we're going to have a rogue one out of this. Lloyd Harris.
Yeah, possible.
There you go. It's a big serving South African. Section 7, Rublev, Kyrgios, Bublik and Auger-Aliassime. Who knows, George? We don't know how... Half of these players, we don't know how fit they are.
Yeah. This is a really tough section to call. I mean, probably the safest pick is Rublev from the perspective of he's the most consistent and
was the highest ranked player.
the highest ranked player. Kyrgios, I don't know if he likes that match with Goffin in some ways.
Scrapper, yeah.
That feels like a long match with someone who's not very fit, but it's a good second round draw. I mean, it'd be a great third round, wouldn't it? Kyrgios Rublev,
yeah.
That'd be a really good early match.
And then we could go Kyrgios Rublev, Kyrgios Auger-Aliassime, or Kyrgios Bublik, which would be hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, Kyrgios Bublik in the fourth round would be actually, it would be a joke. Like it would just be tank on tank. It would be all out tank warfare, which maybe we don't need any more of. But no love for Felix Auger-Aliassime.
In a similar bracket, he definitely can win this section. I think if he was in any kind of form, I probably would pick him to win this section. But again, he's not, is he? So
yeah, all right.
I mean, I'd pick Kyrgios if he was fit, hands down. He's the best grass court player in there. But
I might be tempted to go for a real pin stick in this section, like someone you really like. I don't know, Aslan Karatsev. Just it could go really rogue, that section.
Yeah.
And then finally, the section that definitely won't go rogue, Musetti, the man who was called at the draw Herbert Hurkacz, Thomas Martin Etcheverry, and one Novak Djokovic. I'm going to read you Djokovic's projected draw, George, which is, and this is projected by me, Pedro Cachin, Jordan Thompson, Stan Wawrinka, Hubert Hurkacz, Nick Kyrgios, Taylor Fritz. It's sort of weird because Cachin is such a softball first round, but then Jordan Thompson, that's a really tough second round. And similarly, Stan Wawrinka, if he stays fit and is hitting the ball well, a really tough round. But I don't know, maybe I'm just clutching at straws for some intrigue around Djokovic in the first week.
Yeah, I mean, Wawrinka on grass, I think he can lose first round, to be honest, to Risivori.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't see any interest in this section at all.
All right.
I think I'd be absolutely stunned if it's anyone but Novak Djokovic coming out of that.
Yeah.
And given the issues with the players in the section above, I mean, even if they did have issues, I'd still be back in those.
I mean,
he's going to win it, isn't he?
Short answer: see you 2 weeks on Sunday, Novak.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Right, I know we've both got to run off, George. We will reconvene on Sunday. We'll start doing our predictions. I'll launch Fantasy Tennis today. We'll get Calvin back on Sunday as well. In the meantime, please do make sure you come back for that.
Sports Social Podcast Network.